Hello, everyone.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey. Yeah, so welcome to our webinar, From Chaos to Collaboration. Um, I'm slightly the new conference system is slightly different to the old one. Yeah, welcome. I'm Andrew Wisen. I'm a solutions consultant for Pixitmedia, and I'm here with Derek. Uh, and we're
I'm
going
the
to
CEO
talk
of
to you.
Projective.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to you about the content that you've come for today, which is streamlining creative workflows. So, so Derek, I think, yeah, if I move on to the next slide, we Pixitmedia recently did um, a survey and worked with industry. And something that Pixitmedia has been talking about for many, many years, almost since founding, was that there are common challenges that underpin the entire sort of media and entertainment industry, from kind of lens right the way through to living room in consumption. And so we've got a follow-on asset, which Leanne and the sales team are more than happy to sort of share with you. But fundamentally, there's the stuff that's on this slide, which, data silos, tool fragmentation, the challenges of infrastructure versus IT and engineering bottlenecks versus sort of capacity and scaling. And they all form a common theme, which the story we're going to tell you today is one of a transformation of one of our sort of big mutual customers. But these are threads that run through the entire narrative. So yeah, just wanted to sort of set the scene in that sense. So Derek, shall we talk about our customer?
Yeah, we'll try not to say the name.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're referring to a major global content producer. Everyone knows this company, and again, if I'm gonna try not to say the name because I don't think we've ever received legal permission from their legal department to do so. But basically, this particular producer was, they had over 10 different production hubs around Europe. And essentially each one of those different environments is working in their own way, and they some of them had legacy media composer environments, some of them were on Premiere, and other ones are using other the broad application stack as well, and all of them had their own way of working with zero standardization. um, of course, editors being editors, and kind of being typically headless chickens, running around doing whatever they want, working and just trying to get the content turned out. Basically, the storage was constantly full in each of those locations. So it was a massive manual task to try and constantly keep all the fingers in the dike, so to speak, to make sure that things didn't burst and things kept running down the as they should. Also, archival was a complete chaos, because even though they had the capability to do archival in all these different locations, they were being managed in different ways, and the archive was always this separate thing. It was kind of a black hole for them. So with that being a black hole and unsearchable and usable, you may as well not have that content. Um, so basically, with all those kind of factors in play, they couldn't scale, and essentially their central engineering team was just drowning, trying in constant, day-to-day tasks, just trying to keep the car running, and wasn't able to actually get ahead of things, and they just couldn't scale the organization. So
Yeah. So just as Derek said, we've got like a really poor experience for the end users. We've got a really challenging environment for the engineering team, and these are the two sort of barriers to scale. So these are all the push factors as to why. We're going to paint a picture of how we help them navigate through that. But I just want to emphasize that this was a real joint effort. And so if we just do a quick recap on why Projective and Pixitmedia were chosen, and I think it's that obsession, from whether it's from what you could refer to as an infrastructure provider, of being more than just storage, and similar to, Projective being, you could argue, it's just a workflow solution, but actually it's having some core values of removing those manual friction steps and eliminating silos and trying to create this unity between the infrastructure and the workflows. And we build on each other's we play to each other's strengths, if you will. So Derek's going to go into a bit more detail on Projective Strawberry, but the key elements of the PixStor and Ngenea DNA are really that it's a highly extendable solution, whether that's in terms of storage, tiering, or capacity. Agnostic, all over the place. So hardware agnostic, it gives buyers flexibility. And there's a really strong emphasis on openness, not in the unsecure sense, but in the, not taxing the customers to store their data at rest. So yeah, they're the key themes. That's why PixStor was able to sort of join the party. And Derek, if I'm not sure, am I kind of speaking to some of those core values at Projective?
That's a good lead in. So that hardware agnostic approach and kind of bleeds into our application agnostic and architecture agnostic approach. So in this customer's case, basically they realized that in order to get that scale, they needed a kind of common project architecture that could grow with them, and that's what Strawberry brought to the table. Because it's application agnostic, they could use it across their creative stack, and because it's hardware independent as well and architecture independent, that gave them a lot of flexibility to design the hardware stack underneath it. And they chose, of course, Pixitmedia for that because of the amazing open and high performance architecture they could provide. But also you made them future proof, right? Because in the future, if they want to change their architecture, change their application stack, change their hardware stack, they could, right? And then by giving them that kind of coherent project-based focus, now Strawberry is providing, and we'll talk about this more, we'll show it to you in a brief demo in a bit. We're providing a prescriptive way of working, providing the editors with those project workspaces. So those headless chickens no longer are running all over the coop. You keep them organized and in their kind of pens, so to speak, where they can work freely. This is my first time road testing the headless chicken metaphor to that extent, but I hope it's working.
The good thing, we can't see any of the participants' heads, so they could be like a dozen people with their heads in their hands, Awesome. So yeah, if I can take a minute to nerd out and not on my PowerPoint prowess, but yeah, if I just, let's build up from the ground up, if you will. So I'm going to talk about PixStor and Ngenea, but we're going to stare at this wonderful logo. So PixStor, if you don't know, the PixStor is a very well-established storage or data management data solution, established in media and entertainment, well over a decade of prowess. All the big names that you can think of either use or are about to use the solution. It's been proven in over a decade of implementations. So the two key elements that were common to this customer, but also many other customers, not just in post-production, but in visual effects and animation and film dailies and things like that. So first of all is this concept of a performance guarantee. So storage vendors, they sell performance, but that's kind of like quoting the horsepower on your engine. What PixStor, I think it was sort of the first to market 10 years ago, where they decided to, or we decided to, the founders back then, but we decided to guarantee the performance profile right up to the workstation. And that's a really important thing, because video editors don't care about the engine and the car, they care about where they're going. And it's the whole, the drivetrain, the road conditions, tires, everything. That's in media production facilities. That's the networking. That's the performance, right down to the workstation and the application. So very well established that. And the cool thing is that performance guarantee underpins 3 main deployment types. So one is your big scale out storage cluster. So, you know, your kind of hundreds of petabytes, half a rack's worth of hardware, loads of flashing lights, lots of high-end performance. But then there's the mid-range, you know, the entry-level model, which would be a hyper-converged, so like a really neat kind of 2U solution, maybe with some NVMe drives in, capacities up to about 100 terabytes, really lowering the barrier of entry, while still getting those performance guarantees, and then right into sort of this wonderful world of cloud we live in. So you know, it could be a 2 terabyte, a 5 terabyte system backed by one of the major cloud vendors. And then within that storage solution, having features like a policy engine where you can run multiple tiers of disk. And this customer did so at one of their big sites. So, but the performance guarantee underpins everything. So it applies to all of those 3 deployment types. And it applies whether you're doing tiering, whether you're doing video playback and stuff like that. The key thing is, if a user, a creative user, browses to a PixStor on the network, they don't think about where their data is. Is it on the slow storage? Is it on the NAS in the corner of the office? That, you know, is it direct attached to the workstation, or is it in the storage cluster? They just access the data. The storage solution serves that data to them. And that's a really key thing, which even better plugs into the Strawberry way of thinking. So PixStor, performance guarantee, highly scalable, 3 main deployment types. So that's kind of takeaway number 1. If we now put Ngenea into that, well, I've just described a world where, you know, we might want storage solutions to have multiple tiers, so we can combine things like NVMe with Nearline. But the natural next step is to be able to extend that into a more cost-effective tier, something like object, public cloud, private cloud, something like that. And that's really where Ngenea was born. So there are other elements of Ngenea that enable crossing oceans, global collaboration, stuff like that. But for the purposes of this conversation, we will treat Ngenea as our way to move data into a more cost-effective tier, i.e. the cloud. So let's talk about that middle range. So we have 100 terabytes of capacity in a small site because we're just growing our business, growing our operation there. But 100 terabytes, actually, when you put it into reality, that isn't a huge amount of stuff. You know, you can store so many projects. As video files grow, you know, that capacity easily gets eaten up. So Ngenea lets us take that experience where users just think about their data, and the behind the scenes data can be aging out and moving to a cloud target. And the thing I'm gonna set you up, Derek, here. But the key thing is we use a concept called stubs. So things arrive on a file system, but they can be moved out to the cloud. But as far as a user's concerned, they can see what's called a stub file. So it's like the data's there, but it's actually somewhere else. So we can start to make the storage feel bottomless. And when I started working with Pixitmedia sort of 8 or more years ago, we had this idea that, you know, the storage could genuinely be bottomless. Obviously, there's tons of provisos around, you know, you've got to pay your cloud bills and calculate your egress costs. But fundamentally, the policy engine that is in the PixStor that lets us do tiering between disk classes, Ngenea can leverage to move it out to the cloud. And then the final piece to the puzzle is Ngenea isn't just a data mover, it's an integration layer. So it lets us integrate with workflow systems. And so I'm not sure if we call it intelligent integration or integration intelligence, but Ngenea is not only the thing that's going to move us out to the archive place, but we're also going to plug into friendly, strategically aligned applications such as Strawberry. I've done a lot of engineering speak there, and I think that's the fundamental thing that we're talking about: a creative organization doing creative things. It's all well and good having the engineering prowess and being able to impress, you know, the technology buyers, but at some point you've got to show a solution to your end users, your creatives, and your producers. And that's really where, Derek, you kind of ride to the rescue, because we start to package this in something that feels less IT and more fit for creative production. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. So basically those editors, they don't want to think about storage, right? They don't want to think about data throughput capacity. So basically on the back of this really, intelligent, scalable storage architecture, we put the Strawberry project collaboration framework on top of it, and now we're basically we're organizing those projects on the storage automatically and presenting them to the editors when they open a project. We'll show this to you in a moment. But the key thing is, again, to the editors, they don't care about all the stuff. They just want to open a project and work. So, based on that framework, now Strawberry can give you that prescriptive location. Okay, editor opens up a project in Strawberry. He's presented with the project workspace. We'll talk about that in a moment. And all the underlying infrastructure kind of enables that. But they don't have to, again, they don't have to think about that. But this coherent foundation really serves a lot of benefits, which we'll talk about in just a moment.
Cool. So do you want me to move on to the Strawberry core concept slide, Derek?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Awesome. There we go.
So basically, I talked about this concept of the project. Well, a project, don't think about assets, don't think about project files, don't think about folders. Think about the project as like a container. And essentially, Strawberry is going to be a framework for organizing those containers on the underlying Pixit storage. And because we can automate that framework for those projects, you can set templates that enable you to standardize those projects. It takes a lot of guesswork, a lot of manual work out of the creation and management of those projects. And that gives you scale. Because this works on all creative applications, all of those creative applications can work with our project, our project mounts. Essentially, we're not just talking about Media Composer or Premiere or DaVinci, but we're also talking about the broader stack with Pro Tools or After Effects or Photoshop. Now, we give the workspace for those projects, and because of that, there's no more guesswork about where do I work, like Andrew was saying before, on this share or that server or this hard drive. Basically, the editor has that prescribed location for where they're supposed to work. That eliminates the guesswork, but it also eliminates media offline errors. So the editors suddenly love us because they never again see a media offline error. But also, because we are prescribing where those editors are working, and because we are managing the structure of those project containers, now you can set your security on those projects as well. You don't have to set set it at the share level or at the file system level or even at the folder level. You can really set it at the right level, which is the project, which means that you have that project level access control, which means working with freelancers becomes much more secure, right? I always like to say you can't secure something if you don't know where it is, right? And in most post-production environments where editors are working wherever they want or in a kind of hectic, lack of controlled way, you can't really secure your content. But with Strawberry, with that project level security, that lockdown, it provides us a foundation for a sensible security regimen. Now, and this is the least sexy part of this, but we also do hard linking. So essentially, when an asset's used in multiple projects, we will create a hard link and we'll link that asset rather than copying it. And then also, because we're managing and looking at the entire storage, the entire file system, we have a technology of deduplication that we can turn on top of that Pixit underlying storage. And what that means is we can reduce a lot of the duplication and copying that normally happens in these environments. In this real world example that we're talking about today, what this led to was a 5x storage utility. So we're talking about a customer who had over a petabyte of storage under Strawberry's management around their different production hubs, but they're actually getting closer to 5 petabytes of usable content off of that. So who doesn't want 5x storage, right? And then I also think it's important to mention there's this concept of contextual search. So on top of these projects, now we give the visual representation of what's happening on the storage and a really lightweight, intuitive way to search those projects, those assets based on their project context. So what that does is it makes the entire content under our management searchable, viewable, visible to the users, whether that's primary storage or whether that's archive storage. So on the back of that, now becomes fearless to archive. You can easily push projects to cheaper cloud storage, and but the editors aren't afraid because they know they can still view, access, search, browse their material. So so with those core concepts in mind, I think Andrew can take it over from there.
Cool, thanks, Derek. Yeah, so yeah, just to play this back in Lego brick fashion, just to sort of bring us all together. The foundation is our PixStor file system, and then we extend that using Ngenea, and that actually the Ngenea elements, it's on top here, but it lets us harness nearline archive, objects, public cloud, and these are sort of the object tiers available in the data core family. But Ngenea is the way we plug into Projective Creative Project Framework. So that gives the users a single pane of glass to go to run their creative projects. And I think we should drop into a demo now and show some shiny stuff. But yeah, fundamentally, users walk in the front door and they just treat projects as what they need to be. It's either online or in the archive. And the key thing, as Derek, you've said, if it's in the archive, it's not opaque anymore. They don't have to be scared to, don't want to archive because might never see it again. It's completely accessible. It's at their fingertips. And the capacity management is automated and taken out of their hands. So the burden of responsibility has been moved to an automated policy. So I think, yeah, let's see if we can go to an automated demo. Right, let's get to, there we go. So yeah, Derek, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So before we get going, I think it'd be nice to show a few features around the new Strawberry 7 interface. And I guess just to demonstrate the closeness between the two companies, I'll drive the demo and push some buttons, and then that will reiterate the fact that it doesn't require an engineer to drive the entire system. So what we're looking at here is the main page of Strawberry. There are two views: project view, as in I'm working on a campaign, for example, and then we have an asset view as well. But let's the process for a user to set up one of those managed project environments is simply just to walk through a 3-step wizard, create a project, select a template, and because Strawberry is agnostic, it supports lots of different applications. And I see we've got some Jigsaw people on there, so we'll add Jigsaw people to the permissions. That then creates the project. So the entire underlying storage has been managed. The templated file structure has been put into place. Did I select a blank template? Of course I did. And so this is now ready to work. So the goal is the user's not hunting around, shared storage, doing all kinds of complex things. The goal is to get to work as quickly as possible. So when they're working, they simply just have to select a project and choose the mount button. I'll do a quick here's one I prepared earlier thing. So if we go here, we can navigate the world using the project view, but similarly there is the asset view in Strawberry, and within Strawberry 7 everything has been given a sort of update. So things like proxies are far more responsive, pending my BT broadband, of course. But you can load proxies, we can navigate, we can play proxies nice and easily. And then just to, again, I'm just going to reiterate it, we're looking at online files at the moment, but if I search through files in my archive, I can immediately see proxies from files that are in the archive. So there is no more, opaque shelf that projects or files go to. It's all just, through the single pane of glass. So if we switch back there, and then within Strawberry, we also have events. So that security element that Derek mentioned, you need to onboard freelancers, but you're working on tier 1, tier 0 content that is either pre-release or relates to, brands that haven't launched products yet. So the key thing is, as well as having security access and controls to really restrict the view, we want an audit trail. So we're not talking about an audit trail from like it's in some opaque logging system that IT can only see. No, we need to have the reassurance that my production users are accessing the project and they're seeing things and they're closing the project. So this is a really big win in terms of bringing everyone to the single pane of glass, but then having all of those grown-up features, those enterprise features that help the magic make happen, if that didn't work too clunkily. So I think let's have a look. I'm going to find a project. So let's take this TikTok thing. It's not in the archive, it's active, whereas my Instagram project is here. I'm going to use the Strawberry feature, which is the archive. So talking about the openness, and this is where, click the button, the magic happens. It's actually a really simple feature as far as me, a creative user or a producer, is concerned. So I'm going to send this to AWS Glacier because that is a supported target in PixStor. So it's going to archive some data. This is now talking to the Ngenea API. And if we actually go through to, here we go, the job just came in, 16:28 UK time. And we can interrogate the job. We can see the report of files that were moved as part of the job. And it just works. That's the really nice thing about this integration. It's based on sort of secure REST API integration. All of the features, in Ngenea, you can speak to your friendly Pixit sales rep to talk about. But yeah, we have pushed this to the archive. And again, just to really reiterate the point, we can still browse the project. We can go into my footage folder. I can still scrub my proxies. I can read my metadata. It all just works because that's all the benefits that Strawberry brings. But effectively, I've reclaimed, 263 megabytes of storage in this particular demo. But like Derek said, this customer was reclaiming multiples of their initial investment, which is huge. Derek, have I done your product justice?
Yeah, there's a lot more we could show, but with 2 minutes to go, we should probably turn it over for questions.
Awesome.
Which is a really good time. I've been monitoring the chat. There's no comments and questions from anyone at the moment, but we would encourage, there's a good amount of people here from various different backgrounds from the look of it. It'd be great if anyone has any questions. I know you're probably sitting there quite sort of amazed at the demo and wondering, is it really that good and really that simple to use? I can speak with confidence, having worked with Andrew and Derek, and our team have done a number of integrations with Projective. It is the go-to when you're looking for a MAM solution right now. But if you've got any questions or comments, please put them into the box and we'll answer them shortly for you.
Awesome, cool. I guess in light of any pending questions, I suppose I've led the witness slightly. We did just we demonstrated the ability to write to AWS Glacier, which is if for anyone who's a particular storage nerd like myself, recalling from Glacier, depending on the flavor you choose and the dollars per terabyte that you want to pay, it can take longer than real time, and that's where, again, the Strawberry Ngenea integration really comes into its own, because Ngenea has a concept called I'll call them micro workflows. So when you're recalling from a standard S3 class, you say, hey, S3 bucket, give me some data, and it gives you it pretty much immediately because of, S3 was designed to serve data into websites. Glacier, on the other hand, you say, hey, Glacier, give me this data, and it goes, yep, I'll be with you, see you in a day, maybe two. And then when it's finally done its thing, it kind of pings out a message and goes, right, there's your data, off you pop. Now that tends to not work in like real-time archive situations, because the application's kind of going, well, I asked for some data, but where is it? The nice thing about the Ngenea Glacier integration, which is just a workflow that Strawberry kind of says, it says, bring this stuff back from Glacier. Ngenea manages that two-step process. And I think, Simon, like you and I have worked on projects where we talk to customers, and again, it feels too good to be true. But yeah, that two-step kind of polite interaction is all brokered by Ngenea, and then Strawberry just politely kind of says, hey, Ngenea, how's it going? And you see a progress bar, and it comes back. So
It's true.
that's oh, I've just seen some questions arrive. What's this?
Exactly. We just had the first few. So the first one is, we work with LTO tapes for our archive. How does that integrate?
So the cool thing is there's two options here. So yeah, and actually, Simon, you're probably quite well placed. That there are tape integration options with PixStor as a file solution. And if I remember rightly, there's also tape integrations with Ngenea, for example, SpectraLogic Black Pearl. So there are some referenceable customers that have chosen that option. And then Derek, Strawberry also supports tape, right? Everyone supports tape.
I mean, essentially, what Strawberry doesn't want to manage tapes, right? It's just not what we want to do. What we want to do is move a collection, a project container off of the primary onto cheaper secondary, and then let a tool like Ngenea manage the ultimate writing of the content to the tapes. You know, to these different tapes and these different libraries, and these ones can be vaulted. But the key thing is, again, from our perspective, it's still searchable, still visible when the content needs to be restored. It's a simple click of a button, retrieve from the archive either an entire project or an asset, and then we just tell Ngenea, hey, bring this back from the archive, and they do.
Yeah, and the integrations we have with LTO systems at the moment, as you say, does sort of stretch to sort of the IBM and a couple of others, including Spectra. But we're open. If there is something that needs to be integrated with, we are open in a project perspective to help, in particularly with a Strawberry application. We'd be very open to look at that. One of the other questions coming through is, how is Strawberry deployed?
So Strawberry runs on a Linux server. And that server can be either bare metal, it can be virtualized, it can be Dockerized, it can run in the cloud, or it can run on premise. So there's a lot of deployment flavors for that. There's also secondary proxy encoding resources that you can scale out as well. You can also have an active passive high availability cluster if you want. So there's quite a few different deployment flavors for the server. There's clients that install a Strawberry client that communicates with the Strawberry server. So it's a server client architecture, and then we're mounting and controlling the underlying storage underneath it. All of these things can be, can be bare metal physical hardware. It can be on premise, it can be in the cloud, it can be Windows, it can be Mac. There's a lot of different deployment flavors that you can implement. So I hope that answered the question.
Yep, very flexible. I think that's a great way of looking at it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we'll do is we'll continue to let everyone answer questions in the chat, and what we'll do is we'll gather them up, we'll put them to Andrew and Derek following this webinar, and we'll get some answers back to everyone. But I think for today, I would really appreciate your time, and thank you both so much for the explanation and equally the collaboration with Pixit. It's always a pleasure working with you both, and I know we've got plenty more projects in the pipeline. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, keep firing them in, and we'll get them across to Andrew and Derek.
Cool. Thank you, Simon.
Really appreciate it.
For coming.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
All right.